A casually dressed woman stood silently as the luxury boutique's manager escorted her toward the exit. His designer suit and condescending smile created a stark contrast with her simple attire. "We cater to a certain clientele," he said just loudly enough for nearby customers to hear. "Perhaps try the department stores downtown." The woman walked away with her head held high, maintaining her dignity despite the humiliation. 40 minutes later, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up outside the boutique. A distinguished man in an impeccable suit stepped out, straightened his tie, and walked purposefully toward the entrance, his expression unreadable but his intention clear. The morning sun cast a golden glow over Fifth Avenue as Sofia Rodriguez strolled along New York's prestigious shopping district. At 44, she carried herself with quiet confidence, her shoulder-length dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her navy t-shirt, beige linen pants, and minimal makeup reflected her preference for comfort over extravagance, despite having access to unlimited luxury. Today was special. Her husband Jackson's birthday was approaching, and after 14 years of marriage to one of New York's most successful real estate developers, she'd learned that finding meaningful gifts required thoughtfulness rather than an unlimited budget. She'd researched extensively and discovered the perfect gift: a rare vintage watch at Prestige Gallery, an exclusive boutique known for its carefully curated collection of luxury timepieces. Sofia checked her watch. 10:30 a.m. Jackson would meet her here at noon before their lunch reservation, giving her plenty of time to purchase the watch and have it wrapped. She paused outside the gleaming storefront of Prestige Gallery, taking in the artfully displayed items in the window. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the interior where impeccably dressed staff attended to equally well-dressed customers. Taking a deep breath, Sofia pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped inside. The climate-controlled air enveloped her, carrying notes of expensive fragrance and polished wood. A delicate chime announced her arrival, though none of the staff looked up immediately. Sofia moved toward a display case containing vintage watches, her eyes finding the piece she'd researched, a rare 1960s chronograph with a history as fascinating as its craftsmanship. Jackson would appreciate both the artistry and the story behind it. "May I help you?" a voice finally asked, the words polite but the tone suggesting otherwise. Sofia turned to see a young woman in a black dress, her hair pulled into a severe bun, eyeing Sofia's casual attire with barely concealed disdain. "Yes, I'm interested in that vintage chronograph," Sofia said, pointing to the piece she'd come for. The saleswoman, whose name tag read Catherine, raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. "That particular item is $92,000. Her tone implied that this information alone should end the conversation. Sofia nodded. "I'm aware of the price. I'd like to see it, please." Hesitation crossed Catherine's face before she responded. "Perhaps I could show you something more accessible? We have some lovely contemporary pieces that might better suit your needs." Sofia met the woman's gaze directly. "I'd prefer to see the chronograph I asked for, thank you." With obvious reluctance, Catherine retrieved a key from her pocket and unlocked the case. She removed the watch with exaggerated care, as though worried Sofia might grab it and run. Placing it on a velvet pad, she slid it across the counter, maintaining a safe distance between Sofia and the merchandise. "It's a limited edition. Only 7 were ever made," Catherine explained, her tone suggesting this information would surely discourage her casual-looking customer. Sofia examined the watch carefully, appreciating the craftsmanship. "It's perfect," she said, her mind already imagining Jackson's reaction. "I'll take it." Catherine's eyebrows shot up. "You'll take it? Perhaps you'd like to discuss financing options." "That won't be necessary," Sofia replied calmly. From across the store, an impeccably dressed man with salt and pepper hair watched the interaction with narrowing eyes. Richard Blackwell, the boutique manager, had built Prestige Gallery's reputation on exclusivity. He prided himself on recognizing wealth on sight, and in his assessment, the woman in casual clothes examining their most expensive watch didn't qualify. Sofia felt his stare but continued examining the watch. After years married to Jackson, she was accustomed to being underestimated. Usually it amused her. Today, she simply wanted to purchase a meaningful gift before meeting her husband for lunch. Little did she know this routine shopping trip was about to become anything but ordinary. Richard approached with the practiced smile of someone who had mastered the art of looking pleasant while delivering unpleasant messages. His Italian suit and handmade shoes created a deliberate contrast with Sophia's casual appearance. "Is there something I can help with here, Catherine?" he asked the saleswoman, though his eyes remained fixed on Sophia. "This customer is interested in the imperial chronograph," Catherine replied, emphasizing customer in a way that suggested Sophia was anything but. "I see." Richard turned his full attention to Sophia now. "Madam, the imperial is one of our most exclusive pieces. Perhaps Catherine could show you something more suitable for browsing purposes." Sophia met his gaze steadily. "I'm not browsing. I'd like to purchase this watch." Richard exchanged a knowing look with Catherine. Sophia had seen this before. The silent communication between luxury retail staff when they had identified someone they believed didn't belong. "Of course," Richard said, his tone indulgent. "However, we have a policy with our high-value items. I'd need to see some form of verification before proceeding with such a significant purchase." Sophia tilted her head slightly. "Verification? A platinum card at minimum. Or perhaps evidence of funds. We've had issues with certain individuals wasting our time." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm sure you understand." A well-dressed couple nearby paused their conversation to observe the interaction, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and second-hand embarrassment. "I don't typically carry cards when I'm dressed for the day's activities," Sophia explained calmly. "But I can assure you the purchase won't be a problem. My husband is actually meeting me here shortly." Richard interrupted, his voice taking on a knowing tone. "Your husband, of course." He glanced at Catherine, who barely suppressed a smirk. "Perhaps when your husband arrives, we can continue this conversation." Sophia understood his implication immediately. He thought she was inventing a wealthy husband, a common tactic apparently among certain individuals. "The watch is a surprise for him," Sophia explained, her patience beginning to wear thin. "I'd prefer to complete the purchase before he arrives." Richard made a show of checking his watch. "I'm afraid without verification, I can't authorize this transaction. We have many genuine customers waiting for assistance." He gestured toward the couple who had been watching, who quickly pretended they hadn't been listening. Another customer entered the boutique, a celebrity Sophia recognized from recent films. Immediately, Richard's demeanor transformed. "Ms. Laurent, what an honor," he exclaimed, already moving toward the actress. "Catherine, perhaps you could continue assisting this patron, or direct her to our sales section in the back." Sophia watched as Richard fawned over the new arrival. The actress, uncomfortable with his excessive attention, glanced apologetically in Sophia's direction. "We don't actually have a sales section," Catherine said quietly. "Look, maybe you should come back another time with your husband," she added with unmistakable skepticism. Sophia checked her watch again. Jackson would arrive in 30 minutes. She could wait and let him handle the situation, but that would ruin the surprise. Besides, she'd never relied on her husband's name or status to be treated with basic dignity. "I'd still like to purchase the watch," Sophia insisted. Catherine sighed dramatically. "I've worked here 4 years. I know a bargain hunter when I see one. You're just wasting everyone's time." The muttered words stung more than Sophia cared to admit. Around her, other customers were beginning to stare. What had begun as a simple shopping trip was becoming an uncomfortable spectacle, all because she'd chosen comfort over couture for her morning attire. The situation deteriorated rapidly when Richard returned from escorting the actress to the jewelry section. His expression had hardened, professional veneer slipping away as he approached Sophia. "Madam, I believe we've been more than accommodating," he said, voice lowered but tone sharp, "but it's becoming clear that you're not a serious buyer." Sophia straightened her shoulders. "I've been nothing but clear about my intentions to purchase the watch. Yet you have no means to verify you can actually afford it." He glanced at her simple clothing with obvious disdain. "We've seen this before. People coming in, handling our merchandise, taking pictures, wasting our time, all for social media posts about a lifestyle they don't actually have." A flush crept up Sophia's neck, not from embarrassment, but anger. I don't need to prove my worth based on my appearance. Richard's patience visibly snapped. Enough. I must insist that you leave the premises. Excuse me. Sophia's eyes widened. You heard me. He gestured toward the door. Either produce verification of funds or exit my store. We cater to a specific clientele, and you're disrupting our business environment. The few customers browsing nearby had fallen silent, creating an uncomfortable bubble of attention. One woman whispered something to her companion, both casting judgmental glances in Sophia's direction. This is ridiculous, Sophia said, her voice steady despite her rising indignation. I'm a paying customer. No, Richard countered. You're not. You haven't paid for anything, nor do I believe you can. He moved closer, invading her personal space. Now, I won't ask again. Please leave before I'm forced to call security. Something in his tone, the absolute certainty that she didn't belong, made Sophia realize further protest would only create a scene. With quiet dignity, she stepped away from the counter. The way you've treated me says far more about you than it does about me, she said quietly. Richard smiled thinly, taking her arm. People like you don't belong here, he said, guiding her firmly toward the exit. Perhaps try the department stores downtown. As they reached the door, he released her arm with a small push that wasn't quite forceful enough to be called assault but left no doubt about his intentions. The glass door swung shut behind her with a definitive click, leaving Sophia standing on the sidewalk of Fifth Avenue, the morning sun suddenly feeling too bright, too exposing. Through the window, she could see Richard returning to his staff, making a comment that caused several of them to laugh while looking in her direction. Sophia took a deep breath, steadying herself against the wave of humiliation washing over her. In 14 years of marriage to Jackson, she'd encountered plenty of pretentious people, but rarely such blatant disrespect. She checked her watch. 11:40 a.m. Jackson would arrive in 20 minutes. For a moment, she considered waiting to explain what happened, to watch his face when he realized how they'd treated his wife. Jackson's protective instincts were legendary in business circles. He'd built his reputation on fairness but was merciless when crossed. Are you all right? A woman's voice broke through Sophia's thoughts. She turned to see the actress who'd entered the store earlier, now exiting with a small shopping bag. I saw what happened in there, the woman continued. It was appalling. Sophia managed a small smile. Thank you for saying so. I'm fine. Just surprised at how quickly assumptions are made. The actress nodded sympathetically before her driver ushered her toward a waiting car. Sophia decided to walk down the block to clear her head. She wouldn't give Richard the satisfaction of seeing her standing outside like she'd been put in timeout. Meanwhile, Jackson Rodriguez's day had been intense, even by real estate mogul standards. 3 development meetings before 10 a.m., followed by a conference call with international investors. But thoughts of lunch with Sophia had kept him focused. These quiet moments together were precious amidst his chaotic schedule. At 11:45 a.m., his driver pulled the black Mercedes to the curb near Prestige Gallery. Jackson straightened his navy tie as he checked his reflection in the tinted window. At 48, his dark hair showed distinguished touches of gray at the temples, and his well-tailored charcoal suit complemented his athletic build, maintained through rigorous morning workouts. Wait here, Thomas, he instructed his driver. We shouldn't be long. Jackson approached the boutique, scanning the sidewalk for Sophia. Finding no sign of her, he assumed she must still be inside. Perhaps she'd found something special for herself, though he knew his wife's preference for simplicity often puzzled those in their social circle. As he reached for the door, a middle-aged woman approached him. Excuse me, are you Jackson Rodriguez? She asked hesitantly. Jackson nodded, instantly alert. Being recognized in public usually meant industry colleagues or journalists. I just wanted you to know your wife was just asked to leave this store, the woman explained quietly. I was inside. The way they treated her was disgraceful. She walked that way, she added, pointing down the street. Jackson's expression darkened. Thank you for telling me, he said, his voice controlled despite the anger flaring inside him. The woman nodded and continued on her way. Jackson pulled out his phone, tempted to call Sophia, but decided against it. Instead, he texted his assistant, Reschedule my 2 p.m. Something's come up. His assistant's response was immediate. Done. Everything all right? Will be, Jackson replied cryptically. He looked through the boutique's windows, observing the opulent interior and the staff's interactions with customers. The manager, easily identifiable by his authoritative stance, was laughing with two saleswomen. Something about their body language, the shared smirk, told Jackson all he needed to know. Jackson Rodriguez hadn't built a billion-dollar real estate empire by being impulsive. Every move was calculated, consequences mapped out 3 steps ahead. He assessed the situation with the same strategic mind that had made him a legend in New York's competitive market. He could see Sophia now, walking slowly back toward the boutique, her posture straight despite the humiliation she had endured. Their eyes met across the distance, and he saw her expression shift from surprise to something more complex. A mixture of love and resignation, as though she already knew what was coming. Sophia quickened her pace, reaching Jackson before he could enter the boutique. I was just taking a walk, she explained, touching his arm gently. How was your morning? Jackson studied his wife's face. After 14 years together, he could read the subtle signs of distress others would miss. Someone told me what happened in there, he said quietly. Sophia sighed. It's nothing, Jackson. Just another case of people making judgments based on appearances. It's not nothing. His voice remained calm, but Sophia recognized the controlled intensity that made boardrooms fall silent. No one treats you that way. Not even on Fifth Avenue. Jackson, she began, but he was already moving toward the boutique entrance, purpose in every step. Inside Prestige Gallery, Richard was describing his encounter with the obvious time-waster to Catherine and another staff member. The nerve of some people, he laughed. Coming in here looking like she just left the gym, expecting. The door opened, and their laughter faltered as Jackson Rodriguez entered the store. Even those who didn't immediately recognize the real estate tycoon could sense his commanding presence. His tailored suit and deliberate movements spoke of wealth and authority that needed no announcement. Richard rushed forward, professional smile snapping back into place. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Prestige Gallery. How may we assist you today? Jackson surveyed the store with calculated coolness before his gaze settled on Richard. I believe you just ejected my wife from your establishment. The color drained from Richard's face as Sophia stepped in behind Jackson. The staff froze, recognition and horror dawning simultaneously as connections were made. Jackson Rodriguez, Sophia Rodriguez, the billionaire power couple known for their philanthropy and business acumen. Mr. Rodriguez, Richard stammered. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Has there? Jackson's voice remained even. From what I understand, you judged my wife solely on her appearance, refused to sell her merchandise, and then physically escorted her from the premises while making derogatory comments. The other customers in the store had stopped browsing, riveted by the unfolding drama. Catherine stared at the floor, suddenly fascinated by her shoes. Sir, if I had any idea who Mrs. Rodriguez was. Jackson raised a hand, silencing him. That's precisely the problem. You shouldn't need to know who someone is to treat them with basic dignity and respect. He turned to Sophia. Was this the watch you were trying to purchase? Sophia nodded, pointing to the vintage chronograph still resting on the velvet display pad. Excellent choice, Jackson said warmly, before turning back to Richard with a markedly cooler expression. I'd like to speak with the owner of this establishment. Richard swallowed hard. Mr. Harrison is in London this week, but I'm the general manager. I have full authority to. Perfect, Jackson interrupted. Then you have full authority to explain to Mr. Harrison why Prestige Gallery is about to face a very public relations nightmare, and why your most exclusive pieces are about to be sold somewhere else. The statement hung in the air, its implications clear to everyone present. Jackson Rodriguez wasn't just a billionaire. His development company owned several of the most prestigious retail properties in Manhattan, and his influence extended throughout the luxury retail landscape. Please, Mr. Rodriguez, Richard pleaded, desperation replacing his earlier arrogance. There must be something we can do to rectify this situation. Actually, Jackson said, his tone shifting to something almost conversational as he placed an arm around Sophia's shoulders. "There is. But first, I'd like you to apologize to my wife. Not because she's my wife, but because she deserved to be treated with respect regardless of who she is or what she's wearing." Richard turned to Sophia, his earlier disdain replaced by naked fear. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I cannot begin to express my regret for my inexcusable behavior." As Richard finished his stilted apology, Jackson nodded curtly. "Now about those consequences," he said, reaching into his jacket and producing a business card. "My office will be in touch regarding your employment status." Richard blinked in confusion. "My employment? Did I forget to mention?" Jackson's smile was devoid of warmth. "My investment group acquired a controlling interest in Harrison Luxury Group last month. The paperwork finalizes today. Technically, I'm your boss now." A collective gasp rippled through the store. Catherine's hand flew to her mouth, while Richard swayed slightly, steadying himself against the counter. "But rather than simply firing you," Jackson continued, "I have something more constructive in mind. Prestige Gallery will be launching a new program next month. Sensitivity training for all employees, taught by experts in unconscious bias and equitable customer service." He turned to Sophia, whose expression had softened slightly. "And my wife has graciously agreed to oversee the program development." Sophia hadn't agreed to any such thing, but she understood Jackson's strategy. This wasn't just about punishment, it was about meaningful change. She nodded, playing along. "Your alternative," Jackson added, turning back to Richard, "is immediate resignation." Richard looked between them, humiliation warring with self-preservation. I would appreciate the opportunity to learn and improve, sir." Jackson checked his watch. "Excellent. Training begins next week. Now, if you'll complete my wife's original purchase, we have a lunch reservation to keep." With trembling hands, Richard processed the transaction for the vintage chronograph. The same hands that had pushed Sophia out the door now carefully wrapped her purchase in premium packaging. The store's earlier hostility was replaced by mortified deference. As the couple left Prestige Gallery, whispers erupted behind them. The story would spread through Fifth Avenue before evening, a cautionary tale about judging people by their appearances. Over lunch at their favorite restaurant, Sophia and Jackson enjoyed a quiet moment of vindication. "Was that strictly necessary?" she asked with a small smile. Jackson took her hand across the table. "Absolutely," he replied. "Not because you're my wife, but because nobody deserves that treatment. The most valuable things in life aren't displayed in shop windows. Character, kindness, and dignity can be found beneath the simplest appearances." 3 months later, Sophia Rodriguez walked through the doors of Prestige Gallery wearing simple jeans and a cashmere sweater. As the newly appointed Director of Customer Experience for Harrison Luxury Group, she had implemented a mystery shopper program that required all boutiques to regularly pass rigorous tests of customer service regardless of a shopper's appearance. The store had been transformed, not just physically with warmer lighting and more welcoming spaces, but in its fundamental approach to customers. Richard Blackwell was still there, humbled but learning, his previous arrogance replaced by a genuine effort to change. The comprehensive bias training program Sophia had developed was now being adopted industry-wide. "Good morning," a new sales associate greeted her warmly. "Is there something specific I can help you find today?" "Just browsing, thank you," Sophia replied, observing how the young woman maintained her friendly demeanor despite Sophia's casual appearance. From his office, Richard spotted Sophia and approached with appropriate professional respect. "Mrs. Rodriguez, welcome back to Prestige Gallery. Everything is ready for this afternoon's community session." Sophia nodded approvingly. The program she'd initiated, introducing underprivileged high school students to career opportunities in luxury retail, was starting its second cohort today. The irony wasn't lost on her that the same boutique that had ejected her for not looking wealthy enough was now opening its doors to young people who had never even walked past such exclusive establishments. "Thank you, Richard. How are the new sales metrics looking?" He smiled, genuinely this time. "Up 32% since implementing your inclusive approach. Turns out treating everyone with dignity is good for business." As Sophia walked through the boutique, observing staff interactions with all types of customers. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. "Operation Dignity going well?" She smiled, typing back. "Even better than expected. Turns out respect is surprisingly profitable." His response came immediately. "Not surprised. Dignity always pays dividends." Sophia slipped her phone back into her pocket, satisfaction warming her chest. What had begun as a humiliating experience had transformed into something powerful. By refusing to accept the judgment of others, she had created a ripple effect that was changing an entire industry's approach to human value. Sometimes, she thought, the most powerful response to judgment isn't anger or revenge, but transformation. Building something better from the ashes of indignity, something that would outlast the moment and change the landscape for others who would come after. In the heart of New York's most exclusive shopping district, Sofia Rodriguez continued her quiet revolution. One interaction, one policy, one life at a time. Proving that true worth had nothing to do with appearances, and everything to do with how we treat one another. Indeed, the most valuable possession is a compassionate spirit, something no luxury boutique can sell.